Hey guys, welcome to TCR. Sid here. Thanks for clicking on the video. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Do you know where your food comes from? Because I do. And I think part of the problem that we're seeing right now is because there's a giant disconnect. So let me tell you what I mean by that. We take for granted now that food is easily accessible. I can go through a drive-through, I can stop at the deli section at a grocery store or get something in a box and eat it on my way walking to my car if I want. It's so easy for people to take that for granted. I think maybe one thing that we've learned in the last few months is that maybe we need to not take that so for granted. There were a lot of people that were maybe higher risk that needed to shelter in place a little bit more severely than others that were having trouble getting food. And so I think that it's important to keep in mind that we need food to live, right? And I think it's important to acknowledge, even if you're not somebody who farms, even if you're not somebody who grows your own food, to acknowledge that those things still have to be done in order for you to be able to call up Uber Eats and have something delivered. Somebody somewhere, whether it's industrial or otherwise, is having to farm whatever it is, the chicken, the corn, the zucchini, whatever it is that is getting to your plate, to your belly. Somebody is having to put the effort in for that. And I think that there is a large portion of society that's starting to wake up to that fact, but I think that there is still potentially even a larger section of society in the Western world that really has no idea where their food comes from, what products that they use on a daily basis that are either animal-based or plant-based and came in some way, shape, or form from a farm. I think that leads to people being more wasteful because they didn't have to work for it. They're not acknowledging the effort and the resources that went into growing whatever it was. And I think that's very sad that people aren't putting that connection together, that they're not realizing that it's not just, oh, the food comes from the butcher case at the supermarket. It doesn't. It goes through a lot before it ever gets to you that way. Got stuck on a branch. I think it's important for us to remember that we do have to have somebody who's farming these things, who's processing these things, who's putting the effort in for us to be able to appreciate those things. And this massive disconnect, it kind of leads to this feeling of entitlement or ease, or that somebody's going to hand it to us. Appreciating the most basic thing that keeps us alive and where it comes from, I think is very important. When you have a disconnect from where your nourishment comes from, you start to kind of have a disconnect with the people around you and the planet around you and your basic place in society. And I think that having that acknowledgement of someone, whether it's yourself because you're farming it yourself, or because you live in the city or an apartment or whatever, and you're obviously not doing it yourself, but taking that moment to appreciate that someone somewhere had to raise that animal, had to grow that vegetable, and had to tend to it every day from the time it was young to the time it reached maturity to the time it was ready to be harvested or processed. And to take that into consideration, because I think that's part of why we waste a lot in our society. And there's nothing wrong with, using every part of the animal to the best that you can. We shouldn't be wasting as much as we do. We do have, resources on this planet that are unlike anywhere else that we know of. And so it's important to utilize them to the best of their capability. If you can at least know where your food comes from, appreciate the work that went into raising it, growing it, harvesting it, I think that as a whole, that's a big step in society. I think that part of the reason that we have a lot of people with their hand out and not a lot of people stepping up and doing things in the world is because, or at least not to the percentages that we should, is because people do have that feeling of entitlement. People do have that feeling of, you know, it's owed me. They don't understand that it shouldn't just be given to you. Somebody had to work to make that for you. Yes, you need food to survive, but somebody had to work to make that for you. So you have to appreciate it. I think that's a big problem with people having a disconnect where their food comes from, not understanding the work that goes into it and the effort that goes into it. I think that's a huge problem in our society, and I challenge you that's watching, that lives in an apartment, that gets Uber Eats every night, to think about that, to appreciate where it comes from, to make yourself a slightly better steward of the world by appreciating your place in that chain, your connection to food and where it comes from and the effort that had to go into getting it to you. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell so you get the notifications.